Hey friends, welcome back. I'm glad to have you here, and I have Andy Hoffman on the line. He's the marketing director for MilesFranklin.com, and Andy's here to help us document the collapse. As he's been noting, we are at an inflection point in history, and we have so very much to talk about. Andy, welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me. As I said, it's our last podcast before the election, and now I don't think there's really anyone in the alternative media community that doesn't understand how important this is. I'm not sure about the mainstream community or how many people are even listening to it, but from the way I see it, this is a battle of good and evil, and either way, it's going to be some real crazy ramifications. But if we do not get Clinton out of office, I really fear for where America's going to go.
Well, you and me both. You say it's an inflection point in history as we approach this election, and the first thing that came to my mind is this quote-unquote rigged election. We're already seeing reports of vote tampering in Texas, people apparently able to early vote, and they press the Trump button on these Soros-controlled machines, and Clinton's name pops up. What are the chances they're just going to steal this thing, Andy?
Well, today's article that I just wrote was called "Everything's Rigged and Everyone Knows It." And, again, good for Trump for putting that word rigged out there. It's becoming the buzzword of the campaign season, not just for the election, but for pretty much everything. I think people are starting to realize that financial markets are rigged, economic data is rigged, polls are rigged. And basically, the mistrust in everything that comes from Washington, as I call it, the evil troika of Washington, Wall Street, and the mainstream media is not to be trusted. And as a result, they could try to rig the elections, but I think there's going to be such an incredible amount of distrust that no matter what happens, I think there's going to be the equivalent of a social revolution.
Well, I think there is a social revolution in play here because people are fed up. They saw what happened to Bernie, how Hillary rigged it and stole it, and the DNC stole the election from Bernie, just like we saw the GOP rig it against Ron Paul. Everybody can see it now thanks to WikiLeaks, which is celebrating Hillary's birthday today by releasing 1,500 more emails. The total now is 33,042 emails. Meanwhile, in Indiana, the voter database is riddled with errors, including thousands of dead voters and duplicate registrations, which calls to mind the work of Project Veritas, which again proves that these guys, Robert Kramer and crew, reporting directly to Obama, visiting the White House over 340 times, meeting with Obama specifically 40 times, reporting directly to Hillary Clinton, that the fix is in. At what point do people go to jail, Andy?
Well, I don't really care about who goes to jail, but what I do care about is getting the country back. And of course, in my role as someone in the financial arena and the precious metal arena particularly, to get financial free markets back, which I have no doubt will occur if Donald Trump wins, because the people that are rigging the markets will no longer have an incentive to do so. But even so, the whole point is that from a financial perspective, everything is falling apart. Whether it's the OPEC production cut or the Deutsche Bank being saved by who knows what investors, all these lies are no different than the campaign lies. And as I said, you can't fool everybody all the time. And right now, it's coming into focus on a worldwide basis that not just America, but all these powers that be, all the things that they've been saying and doing is not true. So I believe that the backlash is here. I mean, look, it already started last year. We had the Greek Oxy vote, the Catalonian secession vote, the Brexit, which was a huge shock to the system because just like this, in Europe, that vote was as rigged against the Brexit as this one is rigged against Donald Trump, and yet the people won, vote rigging and all. And I think the same thing is going to happen here, whether it happens actually on November 8th or the backlash from a mistrust of what happened at the election. I think there's going to be a revolution in financial markets, a revolution politically and socially, and it won't take long to manifest itself. Of course, if he does win, which would be the only chance of saving America, as I said in an audio blog a few weeks ago, it's Brexit times 10, because there's been no outcome that's been rigged more. And if the forces of, let's call it good, actually are able to overcome them, which I have an increasing amount of confidence each day, that's going to shatter the system right there. And I look forward to it because the system, it's inevitable that it's going to fall apart. And whether it's one catalyzing event like this one or a number of catalyzing events, it's coming sooner rather than later.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel buoyed by the fact that so many others, people that previously did not speak out against this corruption, you and I have been doing this now for going on 5 years. Congratulations on your 5 years at Miles Franklin there. And you and I have been documenting the collapse and speaking out against corruption for so long, everything from 9/11 to the economic crimes of Wall Street. But so many others, people in higher positions of power than certainly you and I, people with bigger platforms and mouthpieces, have not been. But now we're seeing, because of WikiLeaks, because of Project Veritas, because of the epic criminality and crimes from Hillary Clinton in the Obama administration, right on down the line to the neocons that support Hillary, we're seeing people speak out. For instance, former federal prosecutor Joe DeGenova believes that Project Veritas has uncovered the hardcore proof that Hillary Clinton committed state and federal crimes, and he's saying, and I quote, "James Comey is a dirty cop for covering it all up." I just think it's inspiring because people are speaking out now, and the cockroaches are having the light of truth shined upon them.
Right, and it's not over yet. Remember, we got 2 weeks left, and if you think that the people who are shining this light aren't saving their best for last, so we got another 2 weeks. And yes, I'm hitting my 5-year anniversary of Miles Franklin. Actually, it's tomorrow, but 3 or 4 months from now, I'm going to hit my 15-year anniversary of going all in precious metals, and not long after that, I started to publicly write on the GATA website. So yeah, I've been talking about this for 15 years. And of course, the reason I started down this path is because I worked on Wall Street a long time. I worked at Solomon during the WorldCom and Enron days and all those scandals. And I learned quickly what Wall Street is about. Of course, that Wall Street pales in comparison to what we see today. But again, yeah, it's nice to see that so many people are talking about these things. And what really shocks me the most, what's really the most empowering of all is, people like us are constantly scouring the website for new names and faces to read and to talk to, and to listen to get fresh perspectives from our view. And it's almost like all of a sudden, it's like if you asked me this 6 months ago, I would have said, yeah, it's the same handful of people. It's been for the past 5 or 10 years. But all of a sudden, I mean, bam, there's just so many amazing websites out there of people that speak truth from different countries and speaking it about financial markets, about politics, about economics, about all kinds of things. And it's really amazing. And I think it really just comes from, as more and more people are affected by all the horrific, world-destroying, wealth disparity-causing policies of the 1%, they're fighting back. It's a real tribute to humanity, and the Brexit was the first big step in that direction. But there's going to be a lot more. I mean, if you come back, we talk 12 months from now, you'll probably see Catalonia on the verge of seceding from Spain. You'll see new prime ministers of anti-EU parties in Italy and France and in possibly Spain. You'll probably have had the Brexit by then, and hopefully we'll have, America that's been rid of the Clinton-Bush crime gang. I don't know what'll come after it, but certainly it'll be a step in the direction of salvation. And of course, everyone needs to know that the overarching issue here is the collapse of the fiat monetary system. I mean, it's going to go down whether you have Superman or Jesus Christ in power. But the fact is, at least if you have an outsider like Donald Trump, you can rid yourself of the poison and have a chance to survive. But frankly, people, if you wake up November, well, it may not be November 9th, it may take months to solve, but if you wake up early next year and Hillary Clinton is the president, you might as well give up, because we're going to have all manner of totalitarianism and socialism and all the horrible things that you're seeing in all the places around the world that we used to make fun of.
Yeah, in World War III, I mean, that's what really concerns me. We have Trump saying he would like to have a dialogue and a conversation with Putin. It wouldn't be a bad thing to get along with the Russians. Talk about the understatement of the century. And I love that you just mentioned the Clinton-Bush crime gang and the collapse of that organization, which I hope happens because you've put your finger right on the head of the beast. And you're right. It is the Clinton-Bush crime gang because the Bushes created the Clintons. George Bush Sr. Says he's going to vote for Hillary, which ought to wake up everybody. I don't care if you're on the right or the left. If you support Hillary and you see that, that should speak volumes to you guys. That should tell you exactly who she is. So should the fact that the Rothschilds are supporting her as president. All right, so let me read a couple of headlines for you. You can weigh in on either one. Saudis, China dump treasuries. Foreign central banks liquidate a record $346 billion in U.S. paper. Andy, they're quietly trying to get out of this paper while they can. And here's another. Deutsche Bank probing misstated derivative valuations after finding, quote-unquote, divergences. That's a good one. Your thoughts on either or both?
Well, in the case of China or just about anyone selling treasuries, they're doing it because they need cash. And, when you see Saudi Arabia selling treasuries, I mean, yeah, you could say it's because of JASTA, but no, it's because Saudi Arabia needs cash. I mean, they just raised $17 billion at junk yields the other day. And, one of the things I've been railing at, especially as someone who worked on Wall Street as an oil analyst for 10 years, is this OPEC production cut lie. I mean, I've seen everything from OPEC over the years, but never anything like this. There's no production cut. There's no freeze cap. There's absolutely nothing going on. They're just playing the Federal Reserve game of jawboning the markets, and pretty soon people are going to realize that there's nothing behind it. There's nothing they can do, and when the oil price does inevitably plunge back to its lows, you're going to see bankruptcies everywhere, and you're already seeing it in a lot of these Middle East countries like Saudi Arabia, who are selling treasuries because they need money. And the Chinese need money. I mean, the Chinese just, not only are they injecting incredible amounts of liquidity into their crashing economy so they can, create bubbles in housing, but the Chinese are trying to stem the flow of capital out of the country as they purposely devalue the yuan. And that's why it's so comical when you talk about the Fed's going to raise rates. I've talked about this last year. If the Fed, just the talk of the Fed raising rates has caused the dollar to surge, and as a result, that only makes corporate earnings get worse, and that makes the ability of all the foreigners that owe money in dollars, it makes it harder for them to do. And if they even attempt to do it, the Chinese are going to just continue to devalue the yuan, as I predicted a year ago. And while they're doing it, that causes capital outflows. So what do the Chinese need to do? They need to get more money to stem how fast the yuan goes down. And that's why they're selling treasuries. So again, it's a catch-22. There's nothing that the central banks can do. There's nothing that the governments can say or do that doesn't cause a feedback loop that makes things worse. And that's why, that's the whole argument against big government. Whatever they do, they screw up. Now we're at the point right now where the screw ups can't be masked by bigger screw ups. All they can do is the end games of, as you say, World War III, hyperinflation. There's really not much else you can do because the people are waking up to it and they're going to vote these people out of office. And if they don't get the opportunity to vote them out, they're eventually going to do it by force.
Yeah, what concerns me about the election again is potential World War III being sparked in Syria as Hillary and her cohorts say it's time to shoot down Russian airplanes. And meanwhile, we have NATO pushing for the biggest military buildup on Russia's borders since the Cold War. What has Donald Trump said about both? We need to back off. We don't need to go to war with Russia. If the neocons and their puppet Clinton get back into the White House, it's Katie bar the door. You better build a bunker because I don't want to see nukes fly. I think Hillary does. All right, what was your thoughts on that Deutsche Bank headline? They've misstated derivatives valuations after finding divergences. That's a good one. Probably, 60, 70 trillion in divergences.
Right. And before I get there, let's go back to Soros saying that it's going to, because I was writing about this morning, he says it's going to be, as if he knows, he knows what's going to happen, that it's going to be a landslide in the popular vote, but that she's going to win. I wasn't even sure. It's amazing. This is one of the few articles on Zero Hedge where they took it off and made it so that you have to subscribe to it. But I think he was saying something about like they won't let it happen in electoral college. And I'm thinking, if there is a landslide in the popular vote, I mean, you're going to talk about there's going to be pitchforks out. I mean, we won't survive the election process if people look up the next day and see that he was winning all of the states and somehow didn't win. And so I would look forward to something like that because I don't believe that election will be considered legitimate and, we'll go into something that makes Bush Gore look like nothing. And as for Deutsche Bank, well, look, good timing. I don't know what time we're posting this, but it's now Wednesday, and on tomorrow is the day that Deutsche Bank reports earnings, and you can bet that they have the best schemers and scammers and propagandists out doing their best to try to get through that by rigging the books and their outlook and trying to pretend that somehow they're going to get funding. But the fact is, this is a dead man walking, and everyone knows it. And the fact that they just had to raise money at junk bond yields, tells you that obviously they're a junk company. And at some point, pretty soon, something's got to give at this company. They're not going to be saved by the Chinese or the Arabs who have no money and are selling their treasuries. Now they're going to buy Deutsche Bank. I don't think so. So, something is going to give there, something to give in OPEC, something's going to give in this attempt to rig the election and give it to Hillary. Because when you see these pictures of 20,000 people at Trump rallies and nobody at Hillary Clinton rallies, and you're trying to tell me that she's going to win, I don't believe it for a second. I don't think, per today's article, as I said, everything's rigged and everyone knows it. I think the people are becoming wise to it, and I don't think we're going to get through this election period without the end of normalcy as we have known it.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, I want to talk about domestic economics here a little bit with Caterpillar. But let me ask you this. As it pertains to those Trump rallies, have you ever seen anything like it? I haven't, maybe except for when Ron Paul was running and he'd get 7,000 to 10,000 people to show up. He'd pack small arenas, 5,000 people. You got Trump packing 20, 30,000 capacity arenas. And you're right, Hillary can't draw a crowd to fill a small gymnasium in a local school. Literally, she can't get 150 real people to show up. And meanwhile, the mainstream media says anybody other than Trump could have beaten Hillary because of her crimes. Everybody's down on Hillary. The only person that can't beat her is Trump. Meanwhile, I don't think you've ever seen so much interest in a Republican.
Anyone other than Trump, like those 14 losers he went up against?
Yeah,
I don't think anyone but Trump could have beat him. Heck, I probably would have voted for against those 14 losers he went up against.
Yeah.
The Republican Party's in such disarray. And, I saw Ron Paul when he came to Denver way back when. It wasn't a stadium, but it was a pretty packed place. And, to think 20,000 people, and not just, once, but everywhere he goes, there's never been a candidate like this in history. So I think it's pretty obvious that the majority of the people want to vote for him. And, now that this, quote, Pussygate thing is behind us, you're seeing him start to surge in the polls, and it's helping him that the Obamacare premiums are coming out right now. So I think, with 2 weeks left and a lot more to be exposed in that time, and, you're going to see an historic day at the polls. Don't forget, though, that in between, you're going to see both sides fighting like you've never seen before. Rigging of data, rigging of markets, rigging of everything until we get to that fateful day. And, it's my guess that when we look back at this from early 2017, we'll have wished we were back in the good old days of late 2016, because the world is on the most unsustainable pace it's ever been, economically, politically, socially, and what's unsustainable cannot last.
All right, now let's talk domestic economics. The state in which I live, Andy, is home to United Health Group. The headquarters for that insurance company, one of the world's biggest, is here. And Obamacare, the MNsure Obamacare program this year is going to go up. They've already announced this. It's baked in the cake. It can't be stopped. Somewhere, I don't have it in front of me. I'll find it here, guys. Somewhere between 50 and 67%. These premiums are going to rise. Even the Democratic governor of Minnesota is coming out and saying Obamacare is no longer affordable. The Affordable Care Act is no longer affordable. This thing is literally devastating families who are required by law to get it if they can't get insurance any other way. It is absolutely burning down the economy, Andy, and I guess Trump says he wants to dismantle it.
Well, everyone should want to dismantle it, because the only people that benefit from it are the people who are not paying anything. And really, it's remarkable. I remember writing about it the first time back in, 2011 or 12, saying it was the worst piece of legislation in U.S. history. Maybe that's debatable. The Patriot Act is up there with it. But it really, the amount of damage that it's done, you're talking Minnesota at 40%. Remember, deductibles are going up by more than the premium rates. And I look at a state like Arizona, where they're saying now there's only one carrier, so the average premium increase is going to be something like 130%. 130%. And Phoenix is the 6th largest city in the entire country. That's a lot of people whose economic activity will grind to a halt if it hasn't already, because of this one thing alone. The other thing that Obamacare has done, among other things, is that it has turned the economy into a gig economy. There are no longer full-time jobs. There are everyone's a consultant, everyone's part-time, and that's what employers have to do to stay around. There's more regulations, and this is the biggest regulation of all. It is the devastation that this act has caused. And when you think about that, Hillary essentially wants to increase it. She wants Medicare to be increased to people in their 50s instead of their 60s. We're talking about, as I've said along, socialist states of America. We in America, look, if she is elected, within 2 years, we're going to be paying European-style tax rates. We're going to be paying a federal rate minimum 50% and throw in all the other ones. It's going to be like in Europe, 60, 70, 80%, which, by the way, is another reason to cash out of your IRAs as soon as possible because they're becoming more worthless by the day. But again, the economic devastation of this one act alone is more important than almost every other economic consideration combined. And given that all those other things are going in the wrong direction too, it just shows you how devastating it is and how imminent the debt defaults and hyperinflations are, both here and in all the other countries that have these similar policies, which would be Europe and Japan and pretty much you name it.
Yeah, I think I saw an article about single payer from WikiLeaks. I think that there was a piece. Well, first of all, the point is that we know about the collusion between Obama, Clinton, the DNC. We know about the private servers. Obama knew about it and had his own private email. That's been revealed. He communicated with Hillary and she with him. All treason, as far as I'm concerned. And one of these WikiLeaks made mention of her goal all along was to get to a single-payer healthcare system, something even worse than Obamacare. That way the government would have full control over your health and your health procedures, whether you get treatment or not. It is the Marxist communist dream. And that's where they want to take us, folks. In my opinion, that's exactly where they want to take us. And it's scary as hell because if she gets in, you can say goodnight to this republic. Everybody might say the republic's dead already, but guess what? In my opinion, it is our last chance to take this thing back. All right, last question for you. Caterpillar warns of economic weakness throughout much of the world, cuts guidance. As you know, 46 consecutive months without retail sales increase. Caterpillar is the bellwether for the health of the economy, at least industrially speaking. And if Caterpillar is sending us a message, Andy, it's that economic collapse is continuing.
Right, even the king cheerleader of all, Jim Cramer, says it's my go-to conference call, the only one you need to know because it's your primer on the global economic outlook. And not only is it 46 straight months of year-over-year revenue declines, but it was, I think, the worst yet for North America, where we're supposed to have this super strong economy where the Fed's thinking about raising rates. So look, the data across the board couldn't be worse. I mean, and you see like in the last 2 days, they put out these PMI surveys to say things are better because we're right in front of the election, directly contradicting, for instance, the massively horrible existing and real and new home sales and durable goods orders. Anytime there's real numbers out there, they're bad. But if they need to fudge something, they'll go to the unemployment report or these PMI numbers that are meaningless. In the real world, things are as bad as they've ever been. The only thing that's even kept them from being far worse is this oil PPT effort to protect $50 oil, which is not going to last. Certainly not much further past the election because these are the worst fundamentals probably in the history of the oil markets. So again, please, people, I don't normally talk about politics so much as I have now, but I realize it's not just about saving the financial markets, but it's about saving our ability as a nation and much of the Western world to survive, because we're going to go back to feudal times with draconian governments and poverty and serfdom if we do not escape this feedback loop right here. This is this is our last chance to save ourselves, and therefore the election of Donald Trump is probably the most important thing you could possibly do to protect yourself. But just in case, you just might want to own some gold and silver.
All right. Well, guys, we'll be back with Andy after the election, and we will either be celebrating or we'll be crying in our coffee. Andy, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right. And guys, thanks for your support at sgtreport.com. Real news 24/7. God bless.
We will vote to put this corrupt government cartel out of business and out of business immediately.